Why, hello, folks. Hey, you know that meme of like, Mom, can we have infinitely scaling damage? And Mom's like, no, we have infinitely scaling damage at home. And then the image at home, and it's this gal. it's Zephyr. Yeah, this is a kind of a fun build that I've come up with. Like, people don't play Zephyr all that much, I'm gonna say. She tends to be ranked pretty low among the tier lists of Warframe, as it were. But she can do some stuff. She can do some stuff that like most people probably don't know about. And yes, she is in fact one of those hallowed Warframes, that very exclusive list of frames that have infinitely scaling damage. But it's in such a sort of like weird and messy and janky way, and it doesn't scale very fast, so it's hard to make use of it in the way that, for example, like a Gara can do something like that. But here is how it works. She has a number 1 ability, the Tailwind, which most people say is like bad. And it lets you fly a bit. See? You can charge it. Whee! And then you fly. Once you're up in the air, you just stay up in the air. You just levitate for a while. Depending on your duration, you're gonna stay here for quite some time. Maybe like 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds or so before you drop down again. That's it. And then if you press the ability instead of holding, you do a zoomy zoom. You can zoom up. Right? And if you aim straight down while you zoom, you will do a dive bomb. Shabam! And if you do a dive bomb right after a bullet jump, you're gonna bounce. And stay up in the air, which is cool. And you can string these, which basically lets you fly, so long as you have energy, which is neato. And as you can see here, I'll do a twirl, and then I'll zoom, and I'll do a, let's see, hup, zoom, zoom. Maybe you can't do multiple bullet jumps, no. But what you can do though is that like every time you zoom, that sort of resets your aim glide. So say for example you do this. You aim glide, and then after a while you start falling down. But if you zoom, you get your aim glide back, and then fall down. And then zoom, get your aim glide back. So, like, if you learn how to maneuver with the number 1, you can stay pretty much, like, mobile forever. So long as you have energy. She also has a number 2 ability, which can be used for grouping enemies and pushing them away. So if you hold cast, you push enemies away. But if you just tap cast instead... wrong button, here. We'll group them and pull them together. So remember that, because that's somewhat important for the build. The number 3 ability is the ability that most people like, which is like why people still rank Zephyr, higher than trash. It's the Turbulence ability, like this. So what Turbulence does is it creates like this field around you, as you can see, with this turbulent wind. And it's not damage reduction, it's damage redirection. Enemy, like, incoming bullets are just gonna be redirected away from Zephyr. She's not gonna get hit. It does not work against melee attacks, and does not work against, like, status effects and AoE attacks and stuff. But bullets are they're just gonna miss. So, here, I'll show you. Say I remove the pause AI here, and I activate this. Like, they can shoot as much as they want. See? These bullets are all just flying off and bouncing to the sides and ricocheting, and they are not hitting me. Which means, like, so long as I'm facing enemies who just fire bullets and stuff, not infested and not, like, just, butcher, stuff like that, I am functionally immortal so long as this stays up. But as soon as it goes down, I die pretty quickly. So that's like the survivability issue. So, what can we do about this? How can we mitigate that? We'll get to that. We'll get to that with the 4th ability, which is the one I replaced. I'm not using the tornadoes in this build. I am instead doing something else. I put in Titania's Spellbind for very specific reasons, because it shores up sort of like the weaknesses that this build has in order to make it work. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing that people don't know. Tailwind, right? You zippity zoom and you can hit some enemies while you zippity zoom through them, and it takes, take a little bit of damage. But Zephyr has an augment for that ability. Target fixation. See here, each enemy hit increases the damage of this ability by 100%. And it resets by being on the ground for 2 seconds. Aha! So long as I'm not on the ground for more than 2 seconds, it will not reset. And every time I hit a new enemy, it will increase the damage of the ability, and this will scale forever, which is kind of cool. So, say we pull up some enemies. I activate my turbulence so that I'm fine, right? I group them together, and then we boom, and then we boom. And if you look at the number in the top right of the screen, that is the damage boost that I am getting from a tailwind. Now, I got hit by a knockdown there, as you can see. And being hit by a knockdown means that, I stayed on the ground for more than my allotted 2 seconds. So we'll get to this. This is where we come to the final piece of the puzzle to make this sort of playstyle work. And that is Spellbind. Titania's Spellbind, it's a crowd control ability. It lifts enemies up in the air. It makes them drop their weapons, so when they land, they have to go and pick their weapons up again. You can hold to cast on yourself to cleanse yourself of status effects and give you a 20-second status immunity, so you can't get hit by knockdowns and stuff. And also, if you have the augment for it, the Spellbound Harvest, if you hit more than 4 or at least 4 enemies or more with one cast, it will generate energy for you, which is cool. Zephyr also has, a thing where if you cast your abilities while you're in the air, they cost less than if you cast them while you're on the ground. And so when you think about Helminth stuff for Zephyr, you kind of want stuff that can be cast while you're airborne. So, in this build, there are things you can tweak if you want to. I put strength pretty high so that I can accumulate damage a bit faster. Otherwise, it's probably a good idea to try to get as much range as possible in, so that you hit a lot of stuff with your Spellbind, so that you hit a lot of stuff with your Tailwind, right? Other than that, don't need all that much duration. It's mainly just so you don't have to recast Turbulence all that much. And I also have Rolling Guard, because as you could see, the one moment of weakness I have is right as Tailwind, the ability ends, and I have to cast it again. There's like a gap of like a second or so where enemies can hit me. And that's when you die if you play high-level content. So what you do is, when your Turbulence is like a second away from depleting, you just roll with Rolling Guard. You give it a 3-second invulnerability phase, where you can safely recast your Turbulence without dying. And this is such a good defensive ability. Like, you don't need any more shields. You don't need any more armor. You don't need any more health, because you're basically invulnerable so long as Turbulence is up and you're like airborne. Like, there's just not a whole lot enemies can do to you. So all you need is Rolling Guard to shore up that one little second where you don't have this ability up. And that's it. That's the survivability you need. After that, you use Spellbind for crowd control and for energy generation, mainly, and for cleansing yourself of status effects, which Zephyr otherwise can't do. Use airburst at times, just to group enemies together, which helps, so that you can hit as many enemies as possible with your Tailwind. So when we start using Spellbind like in this sort of kit, we can start to see, you know, how things go. So you do your Turbulence, and you Spellbind the enemies. Boom. Now they're all in the air. They can't really do anything to you. And then you start zippity-zooping and flying through them. Like, you don't have to do the... silly me. I forgot to cast Spellbind on myself. I forgot to make myself status immune. There we go. You don't have to do the dive bomb like this. You can just do this. Just aim forward and just zoom right through enemies. And that super counts. That absolutely counts for increasing the damage of your Tailwind. So now they're getting a bit too far apart, so let's group them together. Let's Spellbind, cast Spellbind on ourselves for good measure, and keep on zippity-zooping. And it's kind of like, you know, smooth sailing, because as long as you have Turbulence up, and as long as you cast Spellbind on yourself, and you just pay attention to your cooldowns, you're not really gonna be taking damage. Now, as you can see, this is a long-term project. It takes a while to build up the damage. But we're getting there. We're already at the point, if you look at the top right corner, where the Tailwind is doing some 248,000 more damage than it does, you know, in its base form. So now these heavy gunners are actually starting to die when I zoop through them like this. Now they're starting to melt, and you know, with that, woo, and the dive bomb obviously is, you know, stronger. Now we're up to about 300,000 more damage than we did initially with this ability, because it's like 500 damage or something in its base form, so you need these numbers. But as long as there are new enemies, you can keep on scaling this damage with this Tailwind forever. And as soon as you start to run out of energy, just find a big group of enemies and cast Spellbind on them, and boom, you get all your energy back. If you get hit by status effects, or if you don't even want to get hit by status effects, cast Spellbind on yourself. And, you know, you can't be affected by negative status effects. And you just keep on doing this. Just keep on flying around and just zippity-zoop. And, you know, let's see if we can stay on the ground for just a short enough time to generate more enemies. Probably not. Probably... Aha! I could do it. Woo! So now let's see like what this is like when we start out with 300,000 more damage, which is like what we have been, you know, generating. Now, zippity-zooping through enemies, you know, still takes some time, but we are getting there. Yeah. We are getting there. But it's fine. I can do this all day. I'm not being damaged. Now, obviously, if you play this in like a real mission, there's gonna be more enemies than this. You're gonna be able to build up this damage a bit faster. Boom. But it's fun. It's like a somewhat different way of playing Zephyr. And it works. It works. You're not gonna die. You are gonna be able to deal damage to enemies, as you know. Doesn't matter how high the levels get, so long as you don't touch the ground for more than 2 seconds, which is fine, because you just cast Spellbind on yourself, be status immune, cast Spellbind on enemies, have unlimited energy, cast Turbulence, be immortal, and just stay in the air, and then just use your number 1 ability to kill enemies. That's it. And your number 2 ability to group them at times when you need to. So it is like a complete kit. Everything sort of synergizes, everything works together. Building up damage is a bit slow. And unfortunately, like, there are some drawbacks to this, right? Number 1, and this is probably why you can't use this in a solo setup, is if you're gonna do survival missions, hey, guess what? Activating life support takes more than 2 seconds. So every time you do have to activate life support, you have to reset your damage bonus and just start all over again. So if you're like in a team of like 2 people and someone else is the one who actually activates life support, hey, then it works. Then it works just fine. But yeah, it's a fun little build. I just wanted to see if I could push Zephyr into doing, you know, different stuff than she could do before. And with Spellbind she can, because like the problem with, you know, trying to build around Tailglide as it was, is just you're gonna run out of energy, right? You're gonna run out of energy, and you're gonna get hit by some sort of status proc, and you're gonna lose all of your built-up damage. Spellbind takes care of that. Make yourself status immune, and never run out of energy, basically. And that's all that Zephyr needs to make this interaction work. So, you know, that's about it. That's about it. That's the whole thing in a nutshell. Spellbind Zephyr. Will it make Zephyr an A-tier Warframe? No, probably not. But if you enjoy the idea of just, you know, flying around and crashing into things forever, and actually killing things while doing it, hey, then maybe this is a build for you. Maybe. Anyway, see y'all next time with something completely different.